Good afternoon, / morning / evening, depending on when you're watching this, and welcome to Rolling with the Punches, your weekly MMA show with me, Bez, and you,
Quinn. How we doing, guys? How we doing?
Today we are looking forward to UFC in Vegas 19. We're going to be doing a quick review of the rain card, talking about Usman and his very strange promotional tactics.
Yeah.
We talked about the weight miss yesterday on the main card. We're talking about GSP, and we are also going to mention. Oh, we'll see what we get to.
Yeah.
We'll leave something a surprise. Might be nice. However, first thing first, as always, is going to be talking about the main card.
Main card, yeah.
Before we get into it, guys, if you like the channel, then please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more notifications. And check out the rest of the things we're doing on our channel. We've got a few streams out now with fighting games, if you don't always like seeing fighting in the flesh, or if it runs out for whatever reason.
Well, some of us don't like seeing fighting in the flesh, do they?
No. If we ever end up doing a stream with one of our other fellow sevens, you will find out what we're talking about. But to say he's an MMA fan that's kind of squeamish with blood, so it is questionable. But anyway.
Main card, main fight.
Main card, yes. Main event is Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis this week. I'm quite excited about this fight. I mean, with the heavyweights, you never really know what's going to happen.
It can go from absolutely nothing, 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds.
Yeah,
we've seen this quite clearly plenty of times.
Yeah. One punch can end it all. I mean, it's when you've got 260 pounds odd swinging behind you. You can never be too defensive.
And Derek Lewis is an absolute slugger.
Yeah,
that man. Let's face it, he has not a lot of technical game, and he knows it.
No,
he knows full well what he's capable
He's never made himself out to be a slick technical boxer or an elite wrestler. He's made of pure muscle and heart, and to be fair, it does work for him. I mean that fight against Alexander Volkov, for example.
And Volkov was sparing no expense. He was destroying him.
Quite literally 14 and a half minutes, Derek Lewis is losing every second of that fight. He's getting punched up left and right. I think he landed one good combination throughout the entire fight.
And he had his world rocked.
18 seconds of the fight left, and Lewis does what he does best and started landing those big old hands on him. However, Curtis Blaydes is probably the most dominant wrestler we've seen at heavyweight since maybe Fedor, who never even fought in the UFC. I just can't see anyone getting past him, really. I mean, I know Francis Ngannou has, but he's got that freakish power and athleticism.
Yeah.
Granted, Derek Lewis is a strong puncher. He hasn't got the athleticism or the skill of Ngannou.
No, absolutely not.
Although he doesn't want to win over him.
This man just stands up. This man goes to the floor.
Yeah, I hear that. It's like he doesn't believe in wrestling in jiu-jitsu.
He just goes no and stands up and then will ground and pound you.
And Lewis has always been like that.
It is impressive.
The second he finds himself in an unfavourable position, he kind of just decides he's had enough and stands up. It's like Donald Trump's COVID policy. He's like, no, I've had enough of this, so it doesn't exist anymore, and he just gets back up on his feet. That one I'm really looking forward to.
I'm excited. It's going to be a good fight.
We're not making a pizza bet this week, because otherwise Quinn is going to end up seriously out of pocket. I'm now 3-0 up, I believe, after last week's Kamaru Usman victory.
Yes.
Who are you going for?
Well, you know what? Just because of his heart and the amount, just look at him, man. An absolute powerhouse. I will put my money on Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis. Not a bad show. I mean, this one for me is very hard to call. I'm going to go with Curtis Blaydes just because for me he's looked, like as I say, nigh on unbeatable. My pick in that division is Francis Ngannou. I think once this Stipe Miocic and Ngannou rematch plays out, Ngannou's probably going to end up with the belt. So I think he may be the one guy who's got Curtis Blaydes' number in that division. But other than that, I think Curtis Blaydes is the second or a very worst third best guy. So I'm going to go for Blaydes, but I'm not going to feel confident in it. It really wouldn't surprise me if Derek.
It can just go either way. It's a heavyweight. These are the strongest of the strong. These are the big boys.
It's the hardest division to call by far. Every time you're looking at two big strong heavyweights, it's one punch can end everything. And I mean, even Curtis Blaydes, he doesn't look that violent. But I mean, you saw his fight against Alistair Overeem.
Yeah.
It's fine 1 minute, 5 seconds later, Alistair Overeem looked like he'd been in a Friday the 13th film or something. He was horrible. So
yeah,
when you can't say that power, it's hard to call. But I think we're slightly on the opposite side of the fence. But certainly, I'm going to say I wouldn't be surprised if Derek Lewis managed to punch out of the bag. And for me, the reason this fight's interesting is because I think the winner, after John Jones has fought for the belt, I mean Dana White confirmed this week that Jones is going to be facing the winner of Ngannou versus Miocic.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. I mean, he's not done anything in the heavyweight division, but he has been the most dominant light heavyweight. I mean, arguably, besides maybe Khabib, the most dominant fighter in the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see Jones finally step up to heavyweight, see what he can do, but I think the winner of this, especially if they win convincingly, is going to be next up. Or maybe even fighting as a backup fighter. People miss weight, they get injured. you could end up seeing maybe Miocic versus one of these guys for the belt. So,
speaking of
We'll
people
see.
missing weight, can
yes,
we touch on the
good little
subject?
segue. Yes.
Can we touch on weight loss in the UFC and in
Rafael
MMA?
Alves, he broke a record yesterday before he even stepped foot in the cage, which would normally be impressive. But, point number 2, weight cutting. Rafael Alves missed weight by 11.5 pounds. He was due to face Patrick Sabatini at featherweight. As far as I know, I think they're both debutants in the UFC anyway. I'm fairly sure Alves came through the Contender Series, but due to be making his debut and could not have made more of a hash on it. He missed weight. He's supposed to weigh in at 145 or 146 with a £1 allowance. He hit 157.5 pounds, thereby missing weight by 11.5 pounds, making it the worst weight miss ever in the history of the UFC. The record was previously held by Rumble Johnson, who is essentially a heavyweight who somehow used to make a welterweight, but not very much. You kind of expect a guy like that to miss weight, but yeah, it was very disappointing, especially for a guy who's been given this opportunity during the pandemic.
There are so many people. This has affected not him but his opponent as well. There's not many opportunities to fight. You've now, by not even following this person, or just by not taking it seriously.
He's supposed to be making his debut tonight. Maybe he lands an amazing knockout and gets a good bump. It really does affect other people, and I think it speaks more symptomatically to the weight cutting culture in MMA. I know certain places have kind of cut it out a little bit, like in Asia, they're doing a great job. They kind of do hydration tests periodically.
Good.
They move the weight classes up, so like featherweights at 155, welterweights at 180, so on and so forth. But in the UFC, there seems to be so much of this happening, and it seems to have got a lot worse since the morning weigh-ins. Now I know Dana White is planning to move the weigh-ins back to the evening before the fight rather than the morning, so there's less kind to rehydrate. People be forced to fight nearer the natural weight class, or their dehydrated brain is going to take a punch. But yeah, it's disappointing, man. I mean, he's come out this week and said his walk around weight is 195 pounds. Like, what the hell are you doing cutting down to featherweight?
That's ridiculous. It's not good. It's not good for him. It's not good for anything. It's not good for the UFC. It's not what the UFC needs right now.
No, I mean, I'd definitely see a change in the culture. I mean, I know Joe Rogan, who shouldn't be taken seriously with everything, but when Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz fought, he made a point of saying it was nice to see two guys fighting closer to their natural weight class.
And it was, and it really was. And look how that fight was. It was fantastic.
It was amazing.
Watch.
Yeah. So
I'd
like to see a lot more guys doing that. I think it's just something where until the fighters get unionised and this gets legislated in a bit, it's going to be hard to do anything about it. People are always seeking an advantage, and it's sad you've got to go to this extreme where you're looking to cut 50 pounds just to get to a fight. But it's going to take a bit of legislation, a bit of unionisation. It's a bigger problem in MMA. But I really hope it manages to get sorted, because so many fights get nixed and people just look bad at the last minute when they're trying to cut too much weight. It shouldn't be done.
No, not at all. And things that shouldn't have been done. Another no segue. Usman.
Oh God.
Usman Masvidal is pretty much off. Let's face it, it's not happening.
The strike call out last
Why
weekend.
even call him out?
Yeah, point 3 is Usman being one of the worst promoters in recent memory. Last weekend, after his convincing win over Gilbert Burns,
very
Usman
convincing.
Strangely turned around. I mean, champions don't normally have call-outs. They might aim for someone maybe in another division or an up-and-coming contender,
which wouldn't be a bad shout for Usman.
Usman called out Masvidal, which for me was very strange. He beat him very convincingly only a few months prior. There's no real interest, I think, in seeing that rematch. Like, all right, Masvidal's got a name behind him, but no one's going to be that
He clearly didn't win the first time. What's the point in even doing it again? It was an
extremely dominant decision in the first place. Usman's called him out again. I think Usman went on, it was either an interview or on his own Instagram some point this week, and talked about how he beat Jorge 10 times out of 10 trying to build up the fight, and the backlash obviously was, well, we know that. Right, you beat Jorge very convincingly in the first place. No one's doubting you're a talented fighter. Why call out a guy you've already smashed?
Surely you should be calling out someone you haven't smashed. Let's look at Wonderboy, for instance.
Maybe go up a division or call out someone that you haven't already beat in the top 5.
Wonderboy. I'm pretty sure Wonderboy is even asking for this fight.
He's
asking.
He's starting to get prolific with his call-outs now. I think that's 3 in the last year, Wonderboy's made.
He just wants to fight, man. This man's been sitting around doing nothing at the moment.
But to the point, after all that promotion, Usman has decided this week, or some point last night, which kind of messed up my 5 points, but we were adaptable. He's decided now doesn't want to fight with Masvidal at all, and has come up with no alternative to who he might want to fight. To me, I mean, I don't think Usman's a boring fighter. It is a criticism of his, and it is with a lot of wrestlers, that they don't really have. I mean, people like seeing flashy strikers. They like seeing a knockout. They like seeing a cool submission, but Usman is dominant, but it doesn't get him a lot of fans. I think after a dominant win after the last weekend, like he did over Gilbert Burns, that should have been the time for him to that's his breakout moment. That's the time to get people behind him. Make a good call out, either announce you're going out to middleweight, maybe announce a new opponent, someone's really thought of. He's announced Masvidal, which weren't really building a lot of hype. He's then gone on to say he'll smash him, which everybody knows, and now he's cancelled the fight altogether. For me, I've never seen anyone in the space of a week go from having a decision that dominant and taking such a dive in the opinion of fans. Like, what do you think should be next for him?
Personally, we need to watch what's happening in the middleweight. We need to watch what's happening, because currently, I don't think he's beating the middleweight champion in any way, shape, or form.
If Adesanya stays where he is, I don't think Usman has already said that he wouldn't want to fight Adesanya. He said he'd rather have two African champions. He's quite proud of his upbringing and his heritage in that way. And same as the Brazilians, don't really love fighting each other. Usman doesn't want to fight another African, especially for a belt. So I do kind of get that, but. If the
style bender takes that title, he wants to stay up there. I say Usman go. Usman go and take that title.
I agree. I mean, the only match I'm slightly interested in seeing at the moment at welterweight for him is Wonderboy. I think if Wonderboy can get another win under his belt, and actually, kind of segueing into our last point, we'll do our fourth point. Sorry, we mix these two together slightly. Edwards has now been matched against Belal Muhammad.
What?
Yeah, the rumours seemed to be last week that him and Covington were going to match up, which seems to be a reasonable match, but.
I mean, this man's already on what, 8-win streak?
8-fight win streak, ranked third in the division.
And now you're putting him against number 13.
Yeah.
For what gain? Like, literally, you've got the entirety of the top 5 waiting to fight.
It's a silly fight. I mean, he was booked to fight Chimaev, who got given an artificial 15 rank. And I can kind of get that, because there's a bit of the unknown with Chimaev. Like, he's come in, he's undefeated, he's smashed up everyone he's touched in the UFC. Kind of get the sense behind that fight, although I do think Leon's getting a big mugged off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fight more because he needs to have the activity than anything else. But now matching him against the number 13 when that fight falled out, I don't make sense of that at all. I think especially now the Usman and Masvidal fights off, the top 6 are a lot easier to match. For me, I would put Usman against Wonderboy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would match Colby against Burns because Wonderboy and Masvidal have already fought.
Well, obviously, but Burns is going to need a little bit of time.
Edwards to fight Masvidal. I mean, Edwards and Masvidal have already got that backstory behind them. They're more evenly ranked in the division. I mean, I know I called Burns out to fight Zhang Lang last week, but now Colby's available. Why not go for it? And that's the top 5-year division all matched up, including the champion as well.
That's a pay-per-view right there. That's a pay-per-view.
Don't get me wrong. I can see why Belal Muhammad would take this fight. I mean, he only fought a week ago, and fair play for him taking a fight against someone like Leon Edwards on a week's notice. But it's a bit of a win-win for him. Like there's nothing to lose there.
No.
But for Edwards, getting forced into a fight against a number 13 guy when you're number 3 in the world, like. It seems to me that the boss doesn't like him, or he doesn't like his fighting style. I mean, he's another kind of Usman in that he's very dominant, but he's not the most flashy guy. He'll win, but he'll win in his way, and he doesn't care whether it's going to be exciting to watch.
But you are also mugging off, these top tier competitors who all are begging for a chance to fight, who we haven't seen fight for a long time. And it just doesn't make sense. I think it's a really silly decision on the UFC's part. Yeah,
and the UFC rankings, they're generally a joke in the first place. We all know this. They're not to be taken too seriously, but to match someone that low down the rank against Leon Edwards, for me, it doesn't make sense. I can't see what Dana's doing there,
but hey, that's it.
It's their call, and I mean, if he really wants to. Maybe he's trying to put Belal Muhammad forward, and don't get me wrong, for Muhammad, if he managed to beat the number 3 guy on a week's notice, less than a month's notice, fair play. There could be another star shot up, and in hindsight, it will look like a great decision. But if, as it happens, Leon Edwards wins, as I expect him to, he's just taking a sideward step, and I think he's still going to need another win against Colby, a Masvidal, or Wonderboy, in order to take that next step to get a title shot. Which you should see that it's not going to be the big kind of name value win.
No, and this should be it. But I mean, again, all he's got to do is go out there, literally demolish him.
Yeah.
And this is it. He's just making a statement. Look what you're throwing at me. Look what I'm doing. This is why I'm number 3.
This seems a very strange.
Give me that shot. Give him a shot. Like why not? Why not?
I mean, I would have liked to see him get the shot already after he beat RDA. I kind of thought that was Leon Edwards' time anyway.
Yeah.
Especially after Colby got his shot. Then they Masvidal got his shot, and well, surely Edwards is the next guy up, but it's not happened for him. So let's hope he can scrape by Muhammad and kind of make good on it, but we'll see. Just for me,
we're here rooting for you, like absolutely.
So I think it just speaks a lot to the favouritism of the UFC matchmakers, and I don't like to see it. So the quicker this Muhammad Ali act gets brought into to MMA, the quicker these guys unionise, the quicker they can start negotiating their own fights. They don't get mugged into this position where they've been unbeaten for several years and are still getting made fight the 13 ranked opponent. To me, it makes no sense.
Absolutely.
On the rest of the main card this week, just to finish that off, we have Ketlen Vieira versus Yannick Kunitskaya. For me, this is an interesting fight to the extent that the next person up will either get a title shot or be in a title eliminator. Ketlen Vieira has looked pretty incredible, to be honest, since starting a UFC run.
Absolutely fantastic submission artist. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's a great grappler. Her only slip up so far has come to Irene Aldana, which is a bit of an upset. I think maybe she got a bit carried away with herself and suffered that early loss. But I mean, you learn from her loss, and as long as she's processed it in the right way, which she appears to have done, I mean, she won her next fight out.
11 wins now.
Yeah, 11-1. I think honestly, with another win, she'll probably make her way forward to, as I say, either a title shot or a title eliminator.
Well, this is it. But then
how well she'll do with it, is. Honestly, I think the best bet for her, if she wins tonight, hopefully gets another fight against one of the top 5. I honestly think by that stage that Nunes probably would have retired. So by that stage, she may well be in with a chance of winning the belt.
Absolutely. If not, you have to go up against the best female fighter
similar to lightweight was and light heavyweight when John Jones was in possession of the belt. You can't really see anyone beating him, and that's fair enough. You know, sometimes these guys come along and they're so dominant. And it's fun to watch them in their own way. It's not always necessarily great when you know someone's going to win a fight, but it is still great watching excellence. It's still I was a fan of Khabib and Jones.
Of course.
Same way I'm a fan of Nunes, but I think once Nunes puts down that belt, it's anyone's game, and Ketlen Vieira's got as good a chance as any. So if she can get a win over Kunitskaya tonight, then I think she'll be pushing forward. Kunitskaya, on the other hand, I mean, I don't want to write anyone off. I mean, they're right next to each other on the rankings.
Yeah.
Vieira's ranked number 6 and Vieira's ranked
7.
Kunitskaya is ranked 7th, I believe.
Yeah.
But for me, Kunitskaya got given a bit of a rough deal. She was brought in against Cyborg in 145 in the first place, and very short notice, essentially to be a victim for Cyborg to kind of get a bit of reputation for herself, getting the defence under her belt. So I'm not going to write her off for that, but she just hasn't looked great ever since. I think she's got a 2-3 or 3-2 record in the UFC, which is nothing incredible. To me, she looks like one of those fighters that she's got a fair amount of technical skill on the feet, but she never looks quite aggressive enough to really implement it. And her ground game's just not at the level you're going to need it to be, especially against someone like a Ketlen Vieira. I mean, who's your pick for these?
Personally, Vieira. I look at, like, her streak is beautiful. Her ground game is amazing, and she can really. Her ground game is just so dominant.
Yeah.
I don't think she stands a chance personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm considering maybe 1, maybe 2 rounds. She's going to lock it in.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Ketlen Vieira get the finish on that. But I mean, you never know. Some people are surprised out the back.
Oh yeah, no, I completely. I mean,
honestly,
because
I think
her striking is not good.
No,
her striking is really
Vieira's striking is
bad,
fairly basic, but in the same way that say a Khabib was in the early stages of his career.
Yeah,
and I think she is getting to the point where she is starting to put that together a bit. She's young enough. I think she's 28, 29.
She's got time. She's got time. She's champion material there, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think certainly if Nunes wasn't the top of the division, she'd be my dark horse of the belt. It's just while Nunes is there, I can't see anyone getting past her.
Yeah, this is nothing.
As I said, I think if she can put out a win tonight, she'll most likely get top 2 or 3 of the division, and then, as I say, I think Nunes will move on from there. I mean, she's just had a kid with her partner Nina Ansaroff. She's achieved everything she can achieve. I think she's scheduled to fight Megan Anderson at some point. Actually, that's on the next pay-per-view.
Yes,
in a few weeks' time, we'll be covering that.
It's a big pay-per-view, actually. That's going to be brilliant.
I think, should she put out the win over Anderson, she would have beat everyone that's even in the division at 145.
Yeah. She's got it. I think that's the perfect time for her to leave, once she's done it.
Yeah, and I think she can come back and maybe do a GSP if in a few years they make a lightweight division and get a Kayla Sanderson out of it, or Claressa Shields makes her way over to the UFC. Then maybe there'll be an interesting fight there for her, but I think for now, We'll see her beat Anderson, and then she'll be off into the sunset. And more power to her, man. Yeah. She's achieved everything she could want. So fair play. But as I say, my pick for tonight, Ketlen Vieira in that fight. Also on tonight's main card, we have Charles Rosa versus Darrick Minner. Darrick Minner, another product of Dana White's Contender Series. I'm not going to go too deep into this fight. I mean, Darrick Minner's, I think, is a bit too old to be making any run at any sort of title anyway. Again, with Charles Rosa, can't see him really making any sort of leap at featherweight. Maybe he'll get to a ranked position, maybe not. But I would expect that to be a fair grappling match. And actually, it might be quite fun. Both those guys, they know what they're doing on the floor. Not everyone's a fan of the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu game, but for me, I quite enjoy it. So I am kind of looking forward to that one. I mean, don't get me wrong, if it was a main event, I wouldn't be staying up for it. But as a backup fight in a card, not too bad.
That's okay.
We've also got Alexei Olenek versus Chris Daukaus in a heavyweight clash. For me, again, I mean, this is probably trying to get Chris Daukaus a bit of a push forward, but I fancy Olenek in this fight. I mean, he seems to be one of those guys. He's an extremely good submission grappler. I think he's at 70 odd fights so far. I'm fairly sure he holds the record for the most amount of submissions in professional MMA. So for me, I think he's shown himself to be, apart from the elite fighters, he can get people down from the floor and show his experience on the mat.
But then again, he's going up against a really decent striker. So.
Yeah, and he is in his 40s. I mean, at some point that chin's going to crack. I mean, he didn't look particularly brilliant. I can't remember if his last fight was against Overeem or the fight before, but his grappling just wasn't enough to hold on the onslaught of getting punched in the chin. So
it's anyone's fight.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me entirely if Chris Daukaus got the win there again. I'm fairly sure I'm right in saying he's another one of the Contender Series products, which seems to be who Dana's trying to push at the moment. But for me, I think Alexei's still got enough in the bag to at least get another couple of wins in the UFC, and I think this is going to be one of them. But we'll see. Next fight up, not a hell of a lot to talk about, to be honest, is Phil Hawes versus Nasruddin Imanov. I know him that well, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Both of these guys are up and coming from the Contender Series. I mean, to be honest, this is the appropriate place to put them. I was moaning last week about putting guys like this on the main card, on the pay-per-view, so for me, fine.
This is a great place for them to show off, but this kind of thing being like 3 places up on a main card is not good.
I mean, they've got identical records. They're similar prospects. I think we'll learn a lot more about them by seeing them both in the UFC. I think Phil Hawes has already had one fight in the UFC. I believe Nasruddin Imanov is making his debut. But as I say, I mean, we know a lot more. So catch up with us on those guys after we've watched the fight. Yeah. Other than that, as I say, it's not one I've been particularly hyped for, or not one I've looked into a hell of a lot. So we'll gloss over it, but it is happening.
And lastly, what's been moved up now to the main card?
Andre Olofsky versus Tom Aspen. Now, this is a fight I am interested in.
Oh yes.
And I think both of us are, if nothing else, just because there is a British guy involved, and we'll have to see that. But for me, this is an interesting fight. I mean, Andre Olofsky, he's former UFC heavyweight champion twice, I believe.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that, similar to an Overeem, he builds up a good streak, has a couple of losses, you think he should retire, and then he starts managing to put it together again. He's not done anything extremely exciting for the last few years. He's not his power seems to have gone in a bit of the speed, always does as you get older. But he's got a hella fight IQ. I mean, he seems to have been managing to put out decisions over some of these younger guys. Granted, his recent record isn't amazing. I can't see him making another run at heavyweight, for example, but he is a good gatekeeper role. I think he's one of those guys like Cerrone at lightweight or welterweight, where like if you can get past him, doesn't mean you champ material, but you're up there.
But this is a place now for Tom to prove himself in heavyweight.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Aspen has been an extremely exciting guy to watch. I actually watched him before he came into the UFC. I kind of tend to try and keep an eye on the British guys.
Yeah.
He's an extremely strong striker. He's 6'5", very physically imposing. As I say, his striking game is sick, but his dad also owns a jiu-jitsu academy. So you've got to assume that
he's going to be an all-rounder.
Is reasonably tight as well. He's not needed to show it yet. I mean, from what he showed in the UFC, it's hard to gauge really. He's on a 5-0 win streak, so longer than that. But in his last 5, he's won the last 5 at least. He's been knocking fools out left, right, and centre, and he's not really needed to show that ground game. But I think he certainly got one. So for me, I think this is going to be a coming out party for Tom Aspinall. I fully expect him to get another early victory. I think Olowski's chin is kind of at this stage is letting him down.
And now he's been put onto the main card. This is now his time to come out and go, right, let's put on a show, let's call someone out, let's make, this is a moment.
I think this is the second time he's been put on a fight night card. I'm hoping, as Quinn says, if he can get kind of a convincing victory this time, maybe he's starting to catch the highlight reels, then maybe we might see him on a co-main or a main event in another fight night card going forward. And I'd like to see it, because to me, the heavyweight ends up with a lot of aging kind of veterans, people who maybe couldn't make it in other sports, failed boxers, people who've been champions in smaller organisations. Tom Aspinall's a young up-and-comer, and I'd like to see how well he can do and kind of what his ceiling is.
Yeah.
Especially as the top end of the heavyweight division, with the exception of Curtis Blaydes, is kind of aging, so there's going to be a lot of room made up there in the next few years.
Yeah.
And I can't see Miocic lasting much longer.
No.
And Ngannou, I love him, but he's already 34. John Jones, I think, 32, 33.
The division's going to evolve. There's going to be more people.
Yeah.
And these are the people to be watching now. This is the young crowd that we're going to see. Like, these are the people who are going to be dominating one day.
Fully agree. So for me, that's one of those that caught my eye. I think keep an eye on Tom Aspinall. Don't get me wrong, half expecting to eat my words now and be back to you tomorrow morning with say that Tom Aspinall shit. Anyway.
Yeah.
But no, like I say, he did caught my eye, and I think this is going to be one of the guys to focus on. So
we've got 3 really amazing heavyweight fights tonight.
Yes,
yeah. And I guess we're up for our last point of the evening, which is actually ending on a little bit more of
something slightly different. We're not actually focusing on active fighters for this, but it could have implications to them. So round number 5. George St. Pierre this week has been, well, actually, you know a lot more about the movie than I do, so I'll let you talk about this.
George St. Pierre is back. He's going to be in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is a new Disney Show Plus show. I think coming out around the 11th of March, if I remember correctly, and he will be.
This?
It's coming really soon. It's coming. It's a TV show, so it's going to be a season, and he's back in his role as Batroc the Leaper, who was originally in Captain America, who is a French martial artist.
You may as well just be saying any words to me now, because I'm not really into the Marvel universe.
No.
I'll tell you what. The reason this is interesting for me though is I think this probably signals the end of George St. Pierre's fighting career.
Yeah.
I mean, there was slight interest, never kind of overly explicit, but there was interest in the Khabib fight. Usman kind of mentioned him last weekend. He swiftly poo-pooed that.
We've got official statements from him. He doesn't want the fight.
He's going to be involved with this series for a while. Granted, he's going to be getting back into fighting shape. But I don't think the studio are going to.
But the Marvel are going to put on that fake body. They want to have that fake body look going on. It's literally for camera. And let's face it, Marvel are just going to be throwing money at him.
Like he's going to be full of doctor's supplements to try and make that physical appearance in the first place. So for me, I think although I'm not overly interested in the film, I think that speaks the end of GSP's fighting career. Yeah. And by extension, I think probably Khabib's as well. I don't think Khabib will come back for that Conor McGregor fight much as Dana White wants him to.
Again, I think as I said to you,
the only fight for me, sorry to interrupt, is the Khabib fight. Is the Khabib versus George St. Pierre. I think that's the only fight that interested him. And so for me, I think Khabib is probably going to walk away from the sport at this point. I mean, he already has.
He has. I mean, he has never once said there's been a glimmer in Dana's eye because he's literally pumping that horse for Conor McGregor rematch. But the only way, why would Khabib take it? Conor just got his ass handed to him.
Yeah, it was not competitive. The only round that Conor won in that fight was the one that Khabib decided to stand and be, let's go, then let's have a bit of a fist.
And he slugged him, and he hit him, him hard.
Don't get me wrong, Conor won that round. Fair play to him, but I think Khabib let him in the same way that when Conor and Floyd Mayweather fought. Yeah. Mayweather kind of let him get away with a few early rounds, carried him to the 8th or 10th, whichever one.
10th round,
and then stopped him then. But yeah, for me, I think that's why it's interesting because I think now all talk of Khabib or GSP coming back is probably done for. Yeah. Which also means I think Usman may well end up going up to middleweight rather than fighting like a Wonder Boy or any of the other contenders. I
say he's only doing that if Stylebender actually stays up.
There's a lot of moving parts. I think if Adesanya does go up, win the light heavyweight title, I think we'll almost certainly see Usman going to middleweight. Yeah. Especially as I said last week, you got Gastelum up there, Whittaker, Darren Till, all 3 former welterweights. Yeah. So it's
makes
not like
sense.
Usman will be outsized up there. And to be honest, I kind of like to see him do it anyway. I mean, it's always been an ongoing debate with UFC fans whether the greatness is defending your title a load of times like a GSP or a Demetrius Johnson, or whether it is going for the next vantage like a Conor McGregor going for the 2 belts before he did the 1. Or Nunes, yeah. For me, I think Kamaru Usman is in that place now where, granted, not all of them been title defences, but he's beat I think 7 or 8 of the top 10 there. He doesn't really have anything to prove at welterweight, so maybe if he took that Wonder Boy fight just to beat a kickboxer, I'd happily see him go out to welterweight.
I mean, I don't know. I'd still have a little bit of money on Wonder Boy for that. I don't know why.
I don't think it's not exactly a gimme, but I mean, in the same way with Khabib, he's faced a lot of different styles, and he's just one of those guys. Every time you see him in the cage, you're just like, well, I can't see him losing, you know. I think for me, that's what Usman's like. So I would love to see him go to middleweight. I think there's a lot of stuff at middleweight there for him. So yeah, I think based on what we said earlier, maybe get this Wonder Boy fight down. Yeah. as fans, we're hoping and praying. Whether it happens or not is another question. But yeah, then seeing it with middleweight would be cool. But yeah, I think all talk of him fighting GSP or Khabib fighting GSP or anyone else fighting GSP at this point is probably off the table. Yeah. Well, I don't blame him, man. He's got nothing to prove. I think he ended up with I think it's 22-2 or 23-2.
He had a fantastic run.
Both losses he ever had, he avenged them. He won the belt back off Matt Hughes after he lost to him in the first place, and he won the belt off Matt Serra after he had that upset loss to him. Yep. And since then, he's not even looked vulnerable. I mean, Russo came back after 4 years off and beat Bisping for the belt. If I was GSP, I'd happily go and sit back and earn that Marvel money for now. I could see why
absolutely. Be silly not to.
So I think that wraps up our 5 rounds.
It does indeed.
Anything else that you want to discuss?
No, absolutely not. I think it's been absolutely wonderful. We mean we're going to have more after Vegas tonight.
Last week we tried coming back online immediately after the fights finished for our camera. What we realised is that both of us A, looked like shit because we're both British fans and it was 5 in the morning, and B, could not be asked to set up the cameras. So what we're going to do is come back on a Sunday afternoon instead with the post-fight catch-up, and we'll look forward to the week ahead. There's other events coming up. Sometimes it will just be purely catching up on the night before, and we'll see what else comes up in the week generally. I mean, MMA seems to be one of those spheres where things change every kind of half an hour. I mean, 3 of my 5 points weren't applicable yesterday. But
absolutely not. No, we completely had to change everything today.
We'll see how we go. But we will be back Sunday lunchtime. And we will see you all then. Thank you for joining us, guys. And once again, if you like the channel, please hit like and subscribe and hit the bell icon for more notifications.
And anything you want us to talk about, anything you think we've missed, please leave a comment.
Drop it down there.
Right there. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.